Kirsten, how are you?
Good. How are you, Roberto?
Good, good, good. New Year's around the corner, and I'm the eternal optimist. So good things ahead.
Yeah.
But I wanna talk to you about your thoughts on who were the biggest winners and losers. I know you wrote a recent column on thoughts and some of the people you mentioned. It was very interesting. I like the way how you intertwine sort of all the different lanes, right? From pop culture to sports to politics, which is always makes it not just this, no offense, sometimes the political stuff can get a little bit lame. As someone who enjoys it thoroughly, um, it's also fun at times to talk about just society as a whole. And we saw in this recent election how, pop culture celebrity came in. And I have my own thoughts. To me, in terms of celebrities, the big winner in the national and the presidential was Joe Rogan. Um,
No doubt.
Oprah got egg on her face. With some Miley Cyrus, is it? Or Taylor Swift? Was it Taylor Swift? Correct me, please.
Taylor Taylor Swift is still killing it. Whether
Yeah,
you like her or not,
I
she's
know,
still
but I'm talking
murdering.
about the outcome, right? Who leaned in,
Yes.
and that's I'm going to leave that up to you. But let's start with pop culture as it sort of relates to the presidential and the outcome. We saw how Bad Bunny was even looped in, and J Lo and Fat Joe. What are your thoughts on that?
So here's where politics got really interesting this year because it completely merged with our pop culture in a way that I think has never really happened before. Kamala was Brat, which is a Charlie XCX song or I don't know, thing concept. I don't even know. The Trump YMCA dance sort of went mainstream. So all this stuff. But in the end, I think that this election was actually the death of the A-list celebrity in politics
Mm.
because a lot of them have, if you go back to the Obama era, I mean, if you go back to any era, I mean, the celebrities have played some sort of role in presidential politics. But obviously Obama, he really had this coalescing of the A-listers around him, and they became much more like strident supporters, and I think participation went up in with the Democratic Party. And we know Hollywood leans that way anyway. But the thing is, Kamala, all she did was stage all of these concerts, which was a big, huge waste of money. People didn't want to hear from the A-list politician anymore. People didn't want to hear from George Clooney or Julia Roberts to say, "Oh my gosh, I just want to go overseas and have people respect America again." And everyone's like, "I just want to pay my mortgage. Who cares what you think?" And Kamala ran a Hollywood campaign. And this new realignment of, if you want to call it populist, you want it, whatever you want to call it, the new MAGA realignment, which is pretty much, I think, pretty working class. No one wanted to hear that. And right after the election, I was waiting. I mean, I wrote a column with the death of the A-list endorsement. Nobody really, it didn't go anywhere. But then you had someone like Joe Rogan who was an untraditional, he's not that type, he's not a Hollywood celebrity, right? He's sort of a different type of guy. And comedians who are in support of free speech had a really big year this year in the political realm. You have like Theo Vaughn landing interviews. And I think a lot of this with Vance and with Trump, these guys that was where people went to get to know these candidates, in a different sort of way. So it was a really interesting realignment in the political world, but then also in the world of the celebrity.
Was it a mistake? Do you think for Kamala not to um, go on that platform, the Joe Rogan?
Yes, big mistake, big mistake.
You know, I was
You know,
asking
I
I was asking someone, Kirsten, I'm sorry to talk over you,
no, that's
about
okay.
the how Trump has managed to sort of um there isn't a term for it, and I'm gonna make it up. He's
Hmm.
uncancelable.
Yes,
Why?
I think how you become really cancelable is you allow yourself to be canceled. And I think there are figures like him. Dave Portnoy kind of comes to mind, but also Dave Portnoy didn't have indictments against him. But there are certain creatures in our culture in the last 10 years who have been able to ride out uh, every single effort to cancel them, you know. And I think Trump, he's a unique figure and he's a fighter. And whether you like him or not, whether you have issues with the way that he conducts his business or the way that he, you know, speaks, and um, he he fights. You know, I mean, look at how no one else would have stood up for Brett Kavanaugh the way that he did. And I think that he shows, and he has shown that resolve. And in a way, there's part of it that's almost shameless, right? He's shameless. He's not like there's no embarrassment. So he doesn't care. He fights through it. And I think that appeals to people, especially, you know, I think that he was kind of done for, and
But
the indictments started to roll in, and I think that people liked that he fought against that. It was like almost like made him a martyr.
you know, Kirsten, the thing that's interesting about Trump, of the many things that just like is really non-conventional and non-traditional, right?
Hmm.
When he ran against Hillary, she outspent him, outraised him, and would have been the first woman president break the glass ceiling.
Yeah,
51% of white women voted for Trump after he said what he, you know, he I don't think no one embraces the bro culture more than Donald Trump, right?
of course, you're
And
100%
again, I
correct.
just it's baffling to me how I don't know. I haven't I've read, but I don't know, and I don't want to speak out of turn what the actual exit polls were in terms of the women voters and how they voted in this last election. But it was a landslide. It was, you know, it's a
Yeah,
mandate. It's a mandate. So it's baffling to me how he can say what he says when he wants to say it, whenever, however, and it's like he's Teflon, you know, going back to the
yeah,
days of John Gotti, the Teflon Don. You know, nothing sticks
yeah,
for some reason.
yeah.
So you think that it was fool's errand for Kamala not to get on these platforms, meaning the Theo Vons and the Joe Rogans? And what do you think? Just again, hypothetically, what do you think the calculation on her side, and why do you think she was advised not to do it?
Well, I think some of the people in her camp, what it's been reported, again, I'm not there, so I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It was reported that some of her more ultra progressive staffers thought it would be alienating to their base if she went on Rogan. And I think the biggest folly about her not going on Rogan, and there was a few things that she didn't do that said this to me. It was just her avoidance of really difficult interviews in the first part of her, really most of her candidacy, which was short. You know, of course, she had a very short runway. I just think she was at her depth. And the thing about Rogan, it's 3 hours. You know, she did go on Call Her Daddy, which apparently she took 2 days off to prepare for. That was a cakewalk. Call Her Daddy, you know, obviously was widely popular with a younger female demographic. Um, but I don't think that I thought it was like, you know, if she was going to do that, that's fine. But she then needed to kind of go across the aisle. She did All the Smoke, which is very popular. Matt Barnes, you know, former
Yes,
NBA
yes, Stephen
guys.
Jackson, Stephen Jackson, yeah.
Stephen Jackson, exactly. My friend produces that. I should know that off my head. But she did, you know, she did go on someone. She went on Shannon Sharp's. But, you know, I had even heard from people who were involved in that. It was like, we won't answer that question. We won't answer that question. We won't answer that question. And so she, you know, this was in the leading up to it, the pre-work leading up to it. They were very selective about the questions that they wouldn't answer.
Mhm.
And I think that when you have someone like Trump, who is an open book, he's fluent in whatever area you want to get into, whether you think it's some of it's BS or whatever, he can go there. He can go deep, he can go um, shallow. You know, he's sort of knows, he's fluent in most spaces. And she is so held back. You know, I think that she's so afraid to make a mistake. She just doesn't have the depth. Even when she wouldn't do the Al Smith dinner, I was just like, what are you thinking? Like that is a tradition, you know, like that. And what she did, it was sort of true to the rest of her campaign. It was, she did the little sketch with Molly Shannon. And all she did was stand there and say some, platitudes or whatever, and spoke to Molly Shannon, who was in character. And it was almost like she let the celebrity do the heavy lifting, and she kind of stood there. And that was, to me, very emblematic of how she ran her campaign. And I just don't think she has the depth, or she's comfortable with herself as a politician, to sit there and do Rogan. And, obviously her people advised her not to do it. But I don't know that she would have done well if she would have done it, to be honest.
Interesting. Kirsten, what do you make of just this was pure sexism? Because the argument can be made that Hillary, faced the same outcome. What are the comparisons? What do you walk me through? Both lose to Trump, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, in the case of Hillary Clinton, everyone thought that it was an inevitability that she would win, right? No
Yeah,
one thought
yeah.
Trump would be president, but here it
Nope.
is, deja vu all over again. So, do you think there's an element of just straight sexism and
No,
racism in the case of Kamala?
no, not
Why?
at all. She was so out of her depth. I think that it would have set women back. Like I'm excited for the first Republican female president. I think she's going to be wearing a dress. No, but I do. I wouldn't, I think it'd be great to have a female president, but I want that person to be a great president, a good politician, an able leader. That just wasn't her. There are females in the Democratic Party who, and the Republican Party, and in the heterodox politically homeless, where are these people, lying now? But I think that there's a lot more female talent out there. She was not that talented.
So
She just wasn't.
why didn't Hillary win?
Why didn't Hillary win?
Yeah,
Well, I think that people don't like her. I
interesting.
think people just don't like her. I just don't. And I didn't vote for either Trump or Hillary. I couldn't, I didn't like either of them. Um, I did think it was a foregone conclusion. And I also think that there is an element to her where she thought that she had it in the bag. So they ran that campaign like that. It's like Leon Lett running across, like thinking he's got the touchdown, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
the
course.
ball. So I
Oh,
feel
it's
like
good memory. That's a good
she
memory.
she yeah, I feel like she ran like a Leon Lett type of campaign. And that was really her folly at the end. And so, and again, it goes back to how people, the media, our institutions have overlooked and underestimated the people who became Trump supporters and why they became Trump supporters. And, in 2016, if you remember, like all these media outlets were issuing like mea culpas, like we missed it, we missed it. How do we miss it? And then they put their head down and continue to miss it over and over again. And so I don't subscribe to the isms. I think that I think Hillary, I was surprised she lost, but I think that there's an unlikability about her. I think she's, in terms of political talent and in terms of leadership and knowledge, I mean, she blows Kamala out of the water. Like, you can't even compare the two. I think it was probably this idea that everyone saw the Democratic Party, like when was the last time the voters actually had a fair primary. So I think a lot of these things came to light, and again, this is the reshuffling with the media, like you're not necessarily there's such a change in the way that we consume news. And I think with, Elon buying Twitter, that was a huge thing as well. So I think there were so many different cultural things at play, but Kamala, she just wasn't strong. She was a bad candidate. She was a bad candidate, and I
Definitely
wouldn't even she can't even sniff Hillary Clinton's, like, Hillary Clinton is wildly more talented than Kamala.
interesting. Let's talk sports now.
Hmm.
2024 winners in the sports world, athletes,
Yeah.
teams, franchises. Who would you say won the chip?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, the
I mean, I'm
chicks,
talking about the Dodgers won.
the
I'm talking about in terms of New York, New York, New York. Let's keep it to New
New
York.
York. Okay, let's keep it New York. Oh gosh. The Yankees just, oh, what a disappointment. They're so boring. It was almost, And my dad grew up in the South Bronx. I'm a
Hmm.
Yankees fan. That was disappointing. Obviously, the Mets had a pretty surprising season. Obviously now they're no longer the underdog, so we're going to see what happens going into 2025. You have that big Soto signing. It's huge. So that was a bit of fun. And I am a big St. John's fan, so I am
Ah, wow, that
hopeful.
makes two of us.
Oh my
Big time.
gosh. All right. Yeah, me too. Me too. Massive. I went to Providence, but I'm a lifelong St. John's fan and I root for Providence, but I always root for St. John's over Providence. So
Oh, wow.
I love the Johnnies.
Yeah. Well, I
Who's your,
remember Billy Donovan and Rick Pitino and
yeah.
Quentin Brooks. That's a long
Yeah, I
time
was
ago.
I was little back then, but yes, but that was my first, it was Mullen era. But yeah, Billy Donovan, of course, um, the great the great early days of the Big East.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. With what's his name? Mike Tranchese was involved with Providence, and then he went on to was it Dave Gavitt? Dave
Dave
Gavitt was the
Gavitt, Dave
yeah,
Gavitt, yeah,
yeah,
the Godfather.
yeah, yeah. Wow, that's
Yeah,
interesting. So
yeah.
let's talk St. John's then.
Okay, so did you go to the game on Saturday?
No, I did not. I did not. I didn't make it. But I go regularly. I was what was the I can't think of the last one I was.
It
I've
was
been
the
this year. I
I
did
haven't
not.
been yet this year, so
The
you've got
Delaware
me.
State game, you mean?
It was a Delaware game, yeah, but they did Coming to America.
Oh
It
yeah.
was a
Oh
Coming
yes.
to
Oh yeah.
America, so I so I'm a huge Coming to America fan. So I was a little
So am
disappointed
I.
I
So
couldn't
am
make
I.
it, but I mean, it was like that is like the apex of like pop culture, St. John's,
Mhm.
like that
Mhm.
moment.
You know,
So it was cool to
Do you
see
know
them.
Katie Honan?
I've never met her before, but I follow her on Twitter. I
She's
know
a
she's I
huge
she
St. John's fan and alum. Well, I forgot to say, Katie and I went into this whole. We sort of sidetracked, went from politics to basketball. And one of the things I took a trip down memory lane. And one of the things
Mhm.
I wanted to mention when you talk about coming to America, St. John's, the Garden, right? When they made the
Yeah.
Final Four, three Big East
Yep.
teams. But what people
Yep.
forget was St. John's was so big, and the New York
Hmm.
media market catapulted St. John's to the level back then that year that Walter Berry won the Player of the Year, he was
Hmm.
not the best player in college basketball. It was Len Bias. Len Bias was the best player in
R.I.P.
college basketball, but because Walter Berry played for St. John's and they were larger than life in the New York City media
Hmm.
market, and print was
Yeah.
strong then, it was a different time. Walter Berry won, and Len Bias was a better player than Walter
Yeah.
Berry. But anyway, I just wanted to correct. I didn't say that, and then after it was over, I said I wish I would have mentioned that. But go ahead. I'll
No,
let the
but it's no, but you're right. I mean, I think when we first of all, New York was the epicenter of hoops. You obviously have that sort of Indiana, that Midwest branch, but I mean, all of the best players were coming out of the Catholic schools in New York City, right? Like New York City
Mhm.
was it. So it was ground zero for so much innovation, so many players. And then you got to St. John's, and I mean, my brother is 7 or 8 years older than me, and he was the manager for the team Louis' last 4 years. So I grew up as a kid. My dad would get in the car, get home from work, get in the car, we're going to Queens. So we traveled to home and away games for like 4 years, and that was maybe like my fourth grade through eighth grade. And I loved, 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 loved them. And all over my room was "We Are St. John's" posters, and those, it was New York's team. And it's so, college basketball is so different now, so it's impossible to get back to that era. But you're right. I mean, it was the media mecca, it was everything. So those collisions of factors was just awesome. It was such a great time. Oh God, now I'm getting a little misty-eyed. But yeah, I'm hoping that this year is a good year for them. I like Patino. I like, where they're sort of moving. They're not falling flat in the second half. They're turning out to be a second half team, which is pretty unique for them, and playing good defense. So we'll see.
I think the other thing that helps St. John's a whole lot is that Patino is openly embracing the NIL.
Yeah,
He says these are the
yeah,
rules of engagement now, and there's no better salesman than Rick Pitino. So I think New York City, the market, if they need to upgrade, and they are going to upgrade their sort of on-campus facilities, which is a must.
Yeah,
I think they're
yeah,
they're 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 playing very well. I mean, two losses, and one, that loss at Baylor was a heartbreaker. To Baylor, better said, was a heartbreaker. Should have won that game.
yeah.
But no, I agree with you. So yes, St. John's. Wow.
Yeah,
Um,
so we'll see. And I think, New York needs they need a little something. I think was it Mike Vaccaro wrote a column about how this is now a hoops town. The Knicks are good, after a hugely disappointing football season, again. But now, we have something to look forward to this winter, and I hope it's true. I really do. I really
what do
do.
you
And
think?
I,
What do
I
you
love
think
the
of the
Big
Knicks
East.
with Carl Anthony Towns and um, I was a little nervous when they got rid of Don. I wasn't a fan of Julius Randle, but I
Hmm.
was a little nervous when the Dante DiVincenzo. I really liked him,
Yeah,
like his game and the way he plays and his intensity. But what do you think of
yeah.
this new iteration of the Knicks with Carl Anthony Towns? And he's a
You
Jersey
know,
kid, and who embraces this. Who's a Knicks fan growing up. What are your thoughts?
So I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest NBA fan. So
Okay, that's fine.
I'll do a little bit. I was a little disappointed that they broke up all the Villanova stuff. I mean, it's still there, but I liked all of those pieces together. But yeah, I mean, I'll start paying attention. This is what I'll do. I'll start paying attention a little bit more in the new year. But yeah, I'm not the biggest NBA fan. I'm a college basketball fan.
All right, so here, give me a New York City 2024.
Hmm.
I mean, migrants.
Yep.
The unfortunate incident. I know you wrote about it. A woman, and it reminded me of, was it Kitty Genovese? Remember that?
Kitty Genovese. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. Yeah. The bystander. They
yeah, I
call it
mean,
the
I wasn't around, but
bystander.
it's a part of New York City lore and history,
Of
right? When
course. Yep.
that unfortunate incident, it sort of reminded me of that, when you wrote that article on people just standing around as this lady was burning to death, right?
Yeah.
What do you? All right, so I'm also gonna give you some anecdotes, as far as I was born and raised here in New York City,
Hmm.
and I always
What
like to
borough are
say
you from?
I'm from Queens, but I was born in
Oh,
Lower
okay.
Manhattan, but I am from Queens. But
Okay.
I always remember, I tell people that there was a time, right, in the '70s, which I read. I'm not that old, but reading about New York City. I'm the youngest of six, crime and city
Hmm.
of lawlessness, and a bankrupt New York City, and strikes, and Bronx is burning. And now we
Yeah.
have this new iteration of New York City where Times Square is Disney now, and it's a clean city where people want to be here, people want to live here. The other thing that's ironic is I remember reading a story in the New Yorker about Johnny Carson moving the Tonight Show from New York City to Los Angeles, and what that meant,
Hmm.
right? And why he was moving, and the city was in shambles. And now all of late night is back, right? I think the only one that's not in New York City is Jimmy Kimmel. Where do you
Hmm.
grade New York City in terms of, are we regressing, or are we still the capital of the world?
I think we have taken a little bit of, I don't know that we're regressing, but I don't know that we are as great as we used to be. That sounds,
Mm,
it's sort of heartbreaking to say, but I think the pandemic obviously made it not necessary that all the companies are here and that all of their talent is here. And I think that some of our talent and some of our industries, they leaked to other cities, right? So Miami, Nashville, like all these places, like you had to be in New York to be in media. You had to be in New York to be so many different things. And I think that people can kind of live anywhere now. And so, or create their product anywhere now. And yeah, it doesn't feel like it's as prominent as it used to. Even, I don't know, like I look at like our police commissioners, our mayors, they used to be national figures. Now it just, I don't know. It feels a little weak to me, but maybe I am being hard on it. I also think that there's nothing else like it. Like I'm not saying that Miami is the new New York. I'm not saying that Nashville's the new York, or I don't think that anything's replaced it. I think that there's just sort of a dilution of power, and it's a little bit more even across the states. But New York is still. It's still, top dog, but does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I hear you loud and clear. What will it take for it to be top dog,
I think
or to
that we
sort of
have to,
reassert itself as number one?
yeah, I think we have to get talented people back in the top perches of leadership. I think politics in general, like, why do you want to become a politician if you're really smart? Go in tech and make some money and do something else. But social media has made it more difficult, I think, to be a politician, a lot more agita.
Mm.
I think that in general, we need to make it safer. We need to also be able to say, you talk about the 70s and the 80s. I think that what was a huge difference then, yeah, there was more crime then, and obviously it was a different world. But I think we were able to call out, yeah, this is a perp and this is a victim. Now I feel like we don't really know. There's no consensus on who the perp is and who the victim is. I think it got a little crazy for a while. So I think we have to bring back pragmatism. I think we have to bring back public safety. I think we have to call out that, hey, like the subways are pretty violent and pretty bad. I ride them every day. It's not, like it's not, like super. Uh, I don't know. It's not like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like sewers down there, but we're putting up with conditions that we shouldn't put up with, and I think we need to get back to that. I mean, it's New York City has a PR problem right now, I think, when it comes to safety. But we still have tons of tourism coming here. But I think but it's also super expensive. You're paying a premium for these conditions that aren't so great. And I don't know. I think they need to fix the safety issue, especially in the subway.
Question: What do you is Richie Torres that guy?
It's
You wrote a
interesting.
wrote it. You wrote a.
I wrote
It
about
was
him,
very
yeah. And you know
very.
what?
I mean, it was a very good story. I mean, it was all. It was like a. You're very you're a fan. Can I say that?
You know what? I'm a fan of his because here's where I think what's sad with a low bar of politicians. He just called out the peeing video. And for a while, people would say, no, it's not a big deal. And it is a big deal. We shouldn't have to put up with that. And again, I've been riding the subway my whole life. So it's not like all of a sudden I'm shocked by the site. I've seen a lot of shit on the subway. Sorry, can I curse on here? Sorry, I've seen a lot of mucky stuff on the subway. Um, but I think it's just refreshing to see somebody call out something with with common sense. So yeah, I am a fan of that for
Right.
sure.
But
I
here's
think
my
we need to
question.
get back to that.
So why are people so risk averse and not willing to do that? I'll make a case that the mayor is pretty plain spoken.
Yeah, I think
He gets hit a lot. So and
he's starting to get there.
Ed Koch was notorious for how am I doing, right? Like,
How am I doing?
and
Yep,
Giuliani, I mean, whether you like him or agree with him, he was you couldn't he's a straight shooter.
yep, I agree.
He thought it, he said it. So what are we missing now then? Why are people so risk averse? Or why do people
I think there's a hangover from the last decade or so where if you said something that was, I don't know, not necessarily in line with this idea of compassion. I've written about that before, how it's sort of like ruining our cities, this twisted idea. Like if you said anything that, okay, for instance, people are afraid to be canceled, right? So that was just the bottom line. They didn't want to say anything that may be considered heartless or didn't fall in line with what the prevailing orthodoxy was. Like, do you remember in 2019 when there was a homeless guy that went into the Whole Foods and there was a video of him and he was just sticking his fingers in the buffet and eating out of the buffet, right?
hmm
Like the guy was definitely, and it was gross. It was unsanitary. And the security guard in the story was like, "Oh, what can I do? Like, what can I do?" And I think that we wrote about it, and I'll never forget like this. Oh my gosh, the reporters who wrote the story, because there's videos, photos, they were just I mean, the amount of backlash that came their way and our way, like, how dare you? This is just a human who's trying to get something to eat. And, it was like, well, that's fine, but a business should be able to say, hey, that's not acceptable. This is not the standards. This is my business. You can't come in here. Like, we should call that out. That's unsanitary. It's disgusting and it's illegal. And so, but if you called that out, you were this like horrible person. And I felt like the pendulum swung so far one way that, you had to kind of say it in private. If you said it on Twitter, you got, oof. I mean, anybody who says, "Oh, the subway was terrible today," I got people in my face. You get this sort of, there's a chorus of people on Twitter that would say, "Oh, that you're so terrible. You have no humanity. You've clearly never been to New York before. It's just a gritty place. That's part of living in the city." And it's like, no, 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 no. It's not part of living in the city. So I think that people just got shut down if they
Mm,
said anything.
mm.
They got shut down. I don't know. You may disagree with me, but
And
that's
you and
so
you
for
and you,
me.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
finish. I'm
Sorry.
sorry, finish your thought.
No, I was going to say for Richie Torres, just to send that tweet, it sounds so stupid, but like that's how low my expectations have gotten. And I think that's why people like Trump too. They call it out. He says things that are an inconvenient truth, and people applaud that. And I think Richie Torres, I saw him tweet that, and I've he's obviously he's a politician. He's sort of paving his way to the next level and what he wants to do. So I understand why he is going so hard. But like him going hard is him kind of standing out.
Mm.
And you know,
No, he's got a compelling story. I mean, look, he's a public housing, you know, person of color. It's he's a real New Yorker.
yeah.
He
And I look at
nothing
some
nothing would hand it to him.
No, no, definitely not. But I look at what our city council is doing, and sometimes I don't even know what they're doing. It's like these little there. There's nothing about quality of life. No one's talking about quality of life. And for a while, if you talked about quality of life, you were told that you were a terrible person, or that you were privileged, or that what are you talking about? Like, I just I don't want my mom to get mugged on the subway. I don't want, like, there's people, random punchers in the East Village. I don't want, like, my
Yeah.
mom and my Pia to get like knocked out. It's like
Hmm.
this is just, I think, his willingness to say it. Does that make
Interesting.
sense?
Yeah, yeah. And you think now it's become more right? It's not so much of a landmine, meaning the pendulum is swinging somewhere to a reasonable place.
Yes. Yes.
Kirsten, let's
Absolutely.
we're running out of time here. What are your predictions for 2025? It can go from the full spectrum. It's totally on you.
I am very excited. Like, even this debate over that's going on the right with the visas and with Vivek and saying, we need to import workers. Like, I think that debate is healthy, and I hope that debate will be healthy again. Like, I hope that we can kind of lean into these things and disagree with each other. The healthiest families, they have it out at dinner, and then they say, pass the cheese, like, like give me pass the bread, like after they're done yelling at each other. I hope that we get back to that. And, again, some sort of sanity, a place where the pendulum does swing back um, to a good spot. I hope that we replace this, some of our far left progressive politicians in New York with pragmatism. I hope we get back to that. As I said, I hope St. John's has a great season and obviously makes the tournament this year and is a Final Four contender. I don't know if, this is just my wish list for New York. And yeah, I also hope that we move away in our celebrity pop culture worlds from so many personal revelations and a little bit more discretion. I would really love that. That'd be nice. I don't want to hear Kristen Cavallari talking about how good in bed Morgan Wallen was. Some of that would be nice, just in general. And yeah, I think those are some of my big things. But I hope we can discuss ideas.
Anything you want
and
to
still
add to
be
the
friends.
conversation, Kirsten, that I forgot to ask you?
Not really. I think that this weird realignment, this place where we are right now, I think it's a healthy place. There's a lot of people who feel politically homeless, who maybe, sort of don't know where they fall. Maybe they fall a little bit more right, a little bit more left. I think it's a good thing. I think, you know, I, I hope that we're moving to a place where we can laugh a little bit more. We can laugh with each other. We don't have to take everything at face value, be so offended by every little last thing. And we just have a better sense of humor in 2025.
Yeah, so you
And
think a little bit,
2020,
a little bit of politically incorrectness is good.
yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great. I love the Tom Brady roast. I loved where comedy was this year. And I do. I think less sacred cows, the better, the healthier society.
What do you over? All right, the last question now, because you just got me opened. You just got me thinking. What do you think of Dave Chappelle and what he says?
I love Dave Chappelle. I think he's an absolute genius. And it's funny because I see people who are on the right and they're like, oh, we can't have like the Babylon Bee, right? There's a big thing in Catholic Twitter right now, or some people on Catholic Twitter saying you got to cancel the Babylon Bee because it's terrible. And I'm like, why? Babylon Bee is hilarious. They go after everybody, and I'm a Catholic, and I feel how why would you lean into fragility? And I think that Dave Chappelle is one of those people that everyone thinks is funny until he hits you where you hurt, and you go, oh man, I like it when he hits the
Everyone
places
else
where I
but me,
hurt.
right?
Yeah, but I like it when he hits the places that hurt me because it makes me think about my own place. So I think my own viewpoint. I think he's great. I was happy that Netflix stood up for him. Obviously, he's a cash cow. I mean, who are you going to go with? You're going to go with the 5 employees that are picketing outside, or you're going to go with your cash cow. But he's one of our great minds.
Interesting.
And if you're going to agree with him 100%, that's a little weird. But
Yeah. Kirsten,
it's not always.
is there redemption for former Governor Cuomo?
Michael seems to think so, right? Michael Benjamin.
What do you think?
I think I don't know. I don't think that I think that he's so much more talented than the current crop we have now. And I, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a good soothsayer. I'm no Nostradamus
Yeah, I know. This is just
yeah, I do think that there is. Um, I don't think that he'll have the widespread homosexual love that he had before, but I think it's going to take his ego to be tamped down a little bit. Even like look at his brother. I mean, his brother sort of reemerged as he's repackaged himself in a bit of a new way, I think. There's a little bit more humility there, a little bit more, I think, reporting, a little bit more openness from him, the way he comports himself. Obviously, is a very different platform. So I think it's going to take a little bit of humility for sure. He's going to have to be a bit of a. I don't know if he can change his worst instincts. I don't know, but I don't know. I think New Yorkers we just we want leadership, and if there's no one else to fill that, he might be the person that fills it.
with that said, does anybody else move you in terms of or are you familiar with the candidates running for mayor? Or
I'm
does anyone pique your interest? Does anyone think are you impressed by any of
no,
the folks running?
no, and I've listened to Michael talk about it. I mean, that's obviously his bailiwick. No,
No,
there's
but I'm saying as a
nobody.
voter. I'm just talking to you in general as a voter. It doesn't have to be right that.
No, there's no one. There's no one. There's no one I'm excited about.
Mm.
There's no one I'm excited about. I think we'll see if Adams ends up there again. But no, I'm not. I'm not excited by anybody. And I think you know, there's the people who come out. The guy from Junior's Cheesecake, who's obviously people who kind of float their name out there. If there was somebody who was strong enough that was an outsider, I think I probably would be more
Do you
excited
think
by them.
Richie Torres should consider running for mayor?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Okay, well,
Yeah, I actually do. Again, I think he's interesting and I think that he has a bright future. I feel like he seems like he's more interested in the governor's race, but I don't know if that's, I know he's talked about both, but yeah, I mean, I think he would be good. He would if he if he becomes, as he has sort of said, he wants to bring the sort of moral clarity that he brought to post October 7th. If he does that and he continues to be a plain spoken, pragmatic guy with sensible viewpoints and brings back this idea of getting back to quality of life and making New York livable and for all New Yorkers, I think, and paying attention to the public safety issues, he'd have my vote.
Oh wow, good, interesting. Kirsten, thank you so much for doing this. This was fun, and anything you want to add to the
Go
conversation?
Johnnies.
Kirsten, hopefully this won't be the last time, and you'll be back. Oh, you know what? I want to ask you this. This is another question.
Yeah.
Best day on the job.
Oh my God. Best day on the job. That's such a hard question. Um, you know what? This is super duper random. Super duper random. The best day, my probably one of my most fun days is I got Victor Cruz post Super Bowl win. We used to have a quarterly magazine. It used to be weekly and then it went quarterly, Page Six magazine. And I used to cover, before I was an opinion person, I used to do a lot of the sort of crossover of pop culture, sports, fashion. Now we're
Hmm.
going back over a decade. So this was when that was sort of emerging
Yeah, yeah, I
as
remember. I remember.
something. And yeah, so I got Victor Cruz it was like a week after the Super Bowl. It was something crazy. And I got LeBron's stylist and I hooked them up on set and it was such an amazing day. I'm a huge Giants fan and it was so awesome. And then that stylist, and her name's Rachel Johnson, she's amazing. And Victor became collaborators, and then Victor became this, like, obviously this big fashionista guy and an interesting figure, I think, in sports in general. And yeah, I felt a lot of gratification that day, but it was just awesome. It was awesome to see that kid from Patterson win the Super Bowl, go from an undrafted free agent to the hero of that team, and then a week later, like, get him on set and put him together with his future collaborator and change. And he always said to me, he's like, "You broke Victor Cruz," like he's such a nice guy in that sense. But that was awesome. That was just a fun day. It wasn't probably my best day, but that's like one of those things that comes to mind that you're like, wow, I had a really cool job. I have a really cool job,
Well, yeah, that is. That is pretty cool. Worst day.
Worst day. Oh God. Oh, what a hard, oh my gosh. I don't know. Worst day. Um, yeah, oh my God,
All
that's a
right.
tough
If
one.
you don't have, it's okay.
Yeah, I know. Something will come to me, but yeah, no, I don't. I mean, listen, as Joe Lapchick used to say, and Louis Carnesecca used to say, it's one day you're the peacock and the next day you're the feather duster. So there's plenty of days like that, right?
There you go.
Where you are having the greatest day ever, and then the next day it's such a high and low in this business. So I can't think of anything specific because I'm a pretty optimistic person, but yeah, I think there's just it's a high and a low, right?
Do you write books as well or no?
I've never written a book yet. No.
I have a book suggestion for you if you ever think about it. If you
Oh
ever think
yeah?
about writing a book, I have a suggestion.
Oh yeah? Do you want to tell me now, or we'll do
Yes,
this
I want to tell
offline?
you now, and I want to wrap with
All
this.
right.
I
All
think
right,
that
theme.
someone should write a book about 1985, 86 in New York City sports. Here's why.
So,
Here's why.
okay.
Lawrence
Mm-hmm.
Taylor,
Yep.
personality.
Love my favorite player.
You had Gooden and Strawberry, and
Mm-hmm.
the '86 Mets in general,
Yep.
and you had Michael Gerard Tyson,
Mm-hmm.
Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
If you
And
and
then,
St. John's, remember St.
yeah.
John's with Mark Jackson, Chris Mullin, right? Native Kids, Walter Berry.
Hmm.
And those are the ones that I can think of. I'm pretty sure that afterwards I'll think of some more. But when you think about that time and hip hop and the birth of hip hop and the culture, the city, just a lot going on at that time, and
So a
how
friend of
I was all intertwined.
It's no, but you're totally right. And I think that when, Louis Carnesecca passing was a real moment to reflect on that because he was sort of this embodiment of what New York was at that time because there was a lot of heart there. Like you could still be like effusive and happy, but there was the grit, there was the passion, but there was
Hmm.
still like a beating heart and it was this combination of everything. And I think at that, those were the sort of the epitome of that, those years. A
And
friend of mine did, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, and you mentioned Coming to America, filmed on
Hmm.
Queens Boulevard, parts of Williamsburg. Eddie Murphy's born in Brooklyn but grew up on Roosevelt, Long Island. It was just again, it was just like the perfect, right. Just a lot happening with the culture, with typical, just like the New York story,
Yeah,
characters,
no, there was,
personality, right, the culture, the city where
yeah,
it was at that time.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It was because that's where all the culture was coming out of. New York had a monopoly on all that stuff, and now New York doesn't have a monopoly. And again, the internet has sort of flattened our culture
I beg
where,
to differ, but I mean we'll have
yeah.
that conversation another. This won't be the last time you and I talk. I guess I'm too New
Well,
York centric, but everyone still wants to be here. You know,
no, I agree. I agree. I totally agree. And I loved, and
I have a running joke. Now everyone's from Brooklyn, allegedly, but who knows? It is what it is. But anyway, Kirsten, I want to wish you a happy New Year, and I hope you had some fun. Right, at a minimum, I'm glad you did this last minute, and
yeah,
let's do it again sometime.
I had a blast, and I
Like
love
Ernie
when people
Banks once
disagree with
said,
me.
"Let's play
So,
two. Let's play two."
Roberto, happy New Year. It was an absolute pleasure. And yeah, let's do this again.
All right, talk soon. Enjoy. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.